Can foreigners actually buy property in Japan? It is the single most common question on this topic, so let us answer it in 3 words. Yes, you can. No nationality requirement, no residency requirement, no visa needed, and no government permission. A tourist can legally buy a Japanese house. But if that were the whole story, this would be a very short video, and a misleading one. Because the people who get burned buying in Japan almost never get burned on the kanai. They get burned on the things they assumed and got wrong. So yes, you can buy. Now here are the 4 myths that cost foreign buyers real money, and the catches that nobody mentions until it is too late. Start with the myth that scares people off before they even begin. The belief that foreigners cannot own property, or can only lease it, or can buy the building but not the land beneath it. In Japan, all of that is false. A foreigner can own the land and the building outright, full freehold, the same ownership a Japanese citizen has, with no expiry date and no special restrictions on price, type, or location. You even pay the same transaction taxes. There is no foreign buyer surcharge of the kind you will find in Singapore, Canada, or Australia. This myth survives mostly because so many other countries do restrict foreign buyers, so people simply assume Japan must too. It does not. Foreigners have quietly been buying everything from Tokyo condominiums to mountain farmhouses for years, using the same paperwork a local uses. On pure ownership rights, Japan is one of the most open markets in the developed world. The door is genuinely open, which is exactly why the next myths matter so much more. This is the big one, the misconception that causes the most heartbreak. Buying property in Japan does not give you any right to live in Japan. Ownership and immigration are 2 completely separate systems that never touch. You can buy a beautiful home in Kagoshima, hold the title in your own name, and still be legally limited to 90 days a year as a tourist. There is no real estate visa and no residency by investment scheme tied to buying a house. Even Japan's business manager visa is not a property play. It requires a genuine, operating business with real substance, not simply an apartment you happen to own. So if your plan is buy a house, then move to Japan. Stop and separate the 2 goals right now. Decide how you will legally stay, through work, study, marriage, a business, or just long visits, as its own project. The house is an asset you can own from anywhere on earth. The right to live in it full-time is a different door with a different key. Myth 3 is that you will simply finance it, the way you would back home. For most foreign buyers, you will not. Japanese banks are very reluctant to lend to someone without permanent residency, a local income, and often a stable history inside Japan. And it gets harder with exactly the houses this channel talks about. On an old property whose building value has already depreciated to 0, lenders frequently will not finance it at all, regardless of its real condition. A handful of specialist lenders exist for non-residents, but they typically want a large down payment and charge higher rates. The practical reality is that the overwhelming majority of cheap Akiya are bought in cash. That is not a disaster. These houses are cheap precisely so that cash buyers can manage them. But it flips the usual logic. Do not shop for a house assuming a mortgage will appear. Shop for what you can actually pay for, and treat any financing you do get as a bonus, not the plan. And myth 4, the most expensive of them all, the belief that the price on the listing is what you actually pay. It is not. Closing costs add 6 to 10% on top, the agent commission, the real estate acquisition tax, the registration tax, and the judicial scrivener, and then the building itself usually needs renovation that dwarfs the purchase. A $20,000 house can quietly become a $40,000 or $50,000 project by the time it is genuinely livable. Beneath that sit the smaller catches that ambush people at the closing table. If you are buying from overseas, you cannot use a Japanese seal, so you will need an affidavit notarizing your signature, usually arranged at your embassy. If you live abroad, you will appoint a tax representative inside Japan to receive your tax bills so that nothing is missed. At registration, you now declare your citizenship, and from April 2026, every non-resident buyer must file a notification, Form 22, with the Bank of Japan within 20 days of the purchase, though your judicial scrivener can handle it for you. And some Akiya banks attach their own conditions, such as requiring you to actually live in the house. None of these is a deal breaker on its own, but every single one is something foreign buyers get wrong simply by not knowing it existed. So, can foreigners really buy property in Japan? Yes, easily, legally, and with the same rights as a citizen. The barrier was never permission. The barrier is understanding that owning a house is not a visa, that financing usually will not come, and that the real cost is the price plus closing plus renovation, never just the headline number. Get those straight, and Japan becomes one of the most open and approachable property markets a foreigner can buy into, and Kyushu, cheap and genuinely welcoming to newcomers, is one of the easiest places to begin. The kanai is settled. The smarter question, the one that actually protects your money, is whether you truly understand what you are buying. If this made Japan's empty house market a little clearer, subscribe to Akiya Handbook, the channel that explains how Japan's cheap houses actually work, honestly, and without selling you anything. There is also a free guide waiting in the description, the Akiya Buyer's Starter Guide, how to buy a cheap house in Japan without getting burned. 11 chapters on the truth about so-called free houses, the hidden costs, and who should not buy. No hype, and completely free. The link is below. Thanks for watching.